Looking for a simple weekend project that's both stylish and functional? Today, I'll show you how to make this handcrafted blackboard, perfect for jotting down notes, menus, or reminders. Made from 2 layers of durable Baltic birch plywood, this 7 3/4 by 9.5 inch design features a crisp scroll saw cut header and a chalk-friendly surface sprayed with Blackboard paint. Let's dive in and I'll walk you through every step from cutting to finishing so you can make your own. Since the frame for the blackboard is cut from 1/4 inch Baltic birch plywood, I decided to stack cut and make 2 at a time. Stack cutting comes in handy anytime you need identical parts, or if you want to cut more than one part at a time, as I'm doing here. I prepared the stack by cutting 4 pieces of plywood slightly oversized. I'll trim them the final size later. I used spray adhesive to attach the pattern to one piece of the plywood, placed the second sheet behind it, and then added a sheet of paper on the bottom. The paper on the bottom is there to prevent the tape from sticking to the lower piece of plywood, making it easier to remove the tape and pattern. Next, I secured the entire stack with clear packing tape. I'm using a number 3 Pegas Modified Geometry blade because there's such fine detail in some places of this pattern. This is one of those times when the magnifier becomes a needed accessory. The key is to follow the lines and let the blade do the work. If you have a variable speed saw, you may want to slow the blade down so it cuts less aggressively if you're not stack cutting. I have hundreds of hours of experience, plus I am stack cutting, so I'm running the saw at nearly full speed. I finished cutting the flower and pushed out the scrap pieces. The next logical step is to cut that long straight line between the flowers at each end. Watching me cut a straight line is likely as interesting as watching paint dry, so I sped up that part. Sometimes seeing an ordinary task at fast speed can be entertaining. The flower on the right side is a mirror image of the one on the left. It takes some skill to cut accurately, so take your time. If you're a little bit off here and there, it's unlikely anyone will notice. As long as the flower looks like a flower, you're okay. The details on these cuts are intricate enough that I would not recommend this pattern to an absolute beginner. This is not an easy turn to make, so I'm going to cut down to the bottom there, go back to the pilot hole, cut around this way, and then along that line down to the point at the bottom. When cutting the letter O, you need to be careful not to venture into the spaces between the 2 halves of the letter, otherwise the center portion may break out. What I do in critical areas like this, and usually on letters in general, is to cut on the inside of the line. This gives you a better buffer zone than if you cut on the outside of the line or even right on the line. I'm passing along this tip because I learned it the hard way, ruining a piece because of one bad cut. It's very frustrating when a critical piece breaks and leaves you with an O that's simply a big hole. Sometimes you can fix the problem, as in this case where the piece being cut is glued to a backer. However, other times this mistake can ruin an entire piece, leaving you with wasted wood and time. Once the letters are all cut, I moved on to that little accent strip below the long vine that connects the 2 flowers. The drill bit I chose for the pilot holes just barely fit between these 2 lines, so I had to be careful to place it precisely. This is an easy cut, although cutting a long straight line with a scroll saw does require attention. It's easy to drift off the line, and a wavy line wouldn't look right, so I carefully cut right on the line for this part of the design. I have one last interior cut, the large cutout in the center that will expose the writing surface for the blackboard layer underneath it. I originally made one of these using 1/2 inch poplar for the upper surface. After I glued it to the blackboard backer, I realized that this thicker frame made writing on the blackboard a bit awkward. That's why I'm using the recommended 1/4 inch thickness this time. I usually make all the inside cuts first, as I'm doing here, and I intentionally left the large cutout for last. This will remove a significant amount of material, and the size will be relatively narrow. If I'd cut this center section first, I would have run the risk of breaking one of the sides during necessary maneuvering to cut the details at the top of the blackboard. Now I can cut the frames to the final size. After I attach the pattern and take the 2 panels together for stack cutting, I cut the bottom to its finished length. However, the fence on my radio arm saw must have been slightly off, as this cut did not align at 90 degrees to the vertical side. I used the scroll saw to finish trimming the bottom, but I wasn't happy with the result. I'll take these to the disc sander to touch them up after I cut the right side. The left side is already aligned because I did that when I attached the pattern. I made the extended cut on the scroll saw, not my best decision of the day. I'll touch this up at the disc sander as well. I should have made both of these cuts at the table saw. As soon as these are done to my satisfaction, I'll take the dimensions from them and cut a bagger for each. After that, I'll take them to the finishing room and spray paint one side with Blackboard paint. When that dries, I'll finish the bags with a flat black acrylic paint. These will then be ready for assembly. The finish is dry on the top layer and the Blackboard paint is dry on the back layer. This is the first Blackboard I made, the one with the 1/2-inch front, but the assembly is identical to the other two I made, which use 1/4-inch material for both layers. I use a refillable glue bottle with a tiny tip for projects like these. I squeezed a bead of glue along all 4 edges and added it to as many other places as I could. I use white glue for most of my projects because it dries clear. I want to apply glue to as many spots as possible on the top layer to ensure a good bond with the Blackboard back layer. I grabbed some spring clamps from the rack behind me. They work great on projects like this and they apply even downward pressure. I have plenty of F-clamps, but they sometimes cause the pieces to shift when tightened. The spring clamps need to be held open, put in place, then you release your grip and the clamp closes tightly on the parts. Alright, that's a wrap. You've got yourself a custom Blackboard that's not just handy, it actually looks pretty cool too. Perfect for notes, to-dos, or just adding a little character to your space. If you like this build, hit that like button, subscribe for more projects like this, and let me know in the comments what you use your Blackboard for. Thanks for hanging out. See you next time.